Welcome to my crackpot theory about there being a real chance that Kurapika, Beyond, and the Hui-Gu-Rou may all actually be connected in a way you most likely wouldn't have expected. Without any ado, let's get into it. Let's start with Beyond, and what we will, for the sake of this video, assume are definitely his seals. The cursed seals, marking Beyond's progeny as powerful/appetizing cursed sacrifices, are shaped in the form of eyes with seals around the pupil in the form of concentric circles. Now, I'd like you to please take a look at this symbol near the top of Kurapika's shrine to his clansmen. I was rereading chapter 346 for a somewhat closely related video topic, when, no pun intended, this symbol caught my eye, and I was immediately reminded of Beyond's curse seals. Yes, I'm fully aware that it absolutely could just be a coincidence. The symbol is part of a shrine dedicated to the Kurta eyes, so it would make total sense that the bit more abstract motif denoting an eye would, by default, be very much reminiscent of Beyond seals, which very much resemble an eye. Nonetheless, as soon as I noticed it, I immediately thought of them, and considering just how connected and layered this whole arc has been, and how minor details, such as a difference in pronunciation of someone's name, have played a major role in the unfolding narrative, I think this potential connection is worth an exploration. This particularly because it is a visual cue, and Togashi-sensei is first and foremost an artist, which to me increases the chances of a narrative connection. Now, considering the seals fully manifested after the completion of the seed urn ceremony by the princes, there's a solid chance that they are directly connected to the succession blood ritual and/or its participants. This is made even more likely by the following. On the chapter 341 cover, we saw a glimpse of Beyond with his hand alight with Nen. If we assume that this is his ability which allows him to brand people with curse seals, we can also assume that since both Longi's and Furyakov's seals are on the lower side of their tongues, that Beyond must, at least partially since we are talking about literal babies, insert his hand inside his progeny's mouth in order to curse them. What does this remind you of? The seed urn ceremony, where in order to be identified as a contender for the succession blood ritual, a prince must put their hand inside the mouth of the seed urn. This is a powerful indication of the notion that Beyond seals are some kind of parallel or sympathetic ritual meant to augment the succession ritual proper in some way, shape, or form. I won't get into what way exactly, since that's not the topic of this video. If you'd like to hear some of my thoughts on that, check out my What's Beyond's Nen ability video. I also have a new theory that I'll make a video on at some point. Whatever the case may be, for the sake of this theory, let's assume that the seed urn ceremony, and thus the succession ritual, are intrinsically tied to Beyond seals. Alright, so how does this connect to the Scarlet Eyes? Well, let me ask you, what are Scarlet Eyes? We know that they are this incredibly rare trait exclusive to the Kurta clan that turns the clansmen's eyes who inherit it a brilliant shade of red once they are agitated. Because of Uvogin noting that the members of the clan were strong, as well as the total proficiency boost Kurapika gets in all categories once his eyes turn scarlet, I think it's fair to say that they inherently serve to empower their, users. Now, we don't know whether they turn everyone into a pseudo-specialist with maxed out proficiencies from the perspective of their innate category, like they do to Kurapika, but let's assume that they do. A category shift, even a pseudo-shift, is something we've never seen any Hatsu be capable of. At most, what particularly powerful Hatsu have been shown to do is awaken and develop another's Nen ability, but even Morena's Contagion is unable to shift someone's category, hence why she's going through all the effort of having her murder flock develop multiple abilities specifically tailored towards identifying and capturing a specialist aboard the whale. Even natural Nen shifts mentioned by Izunavi, where a member of a standard category, but most commonly conjuration and manipulation, shifts to become a full-on specialists, are so rare that we've yet to have confirmation of any character in the series having undergone it. Funnily enough, Miluki of all people may be headed in that direction according to Togashi's exhibition from a few years back, but that's neither here nor there. Category shifting is an extremely rare occurrence. Now, I won't get deep into the origin of the Scarlet Eyes, since we've got nothing to really go on. They could be a natural mutation, they could originate from the Dark Continent, the Kurta themselves could originate from there, or they could have been created by some Nen ritual similar to the succession ritual itself. Whatever their origins, it's obvious that the eyes, or whatever turns the eyes scarlet, have a property intrinsically connected to Nen. After all, they are able to increase one's aura reserves and output as well as max out their proficiency in all categories. A Scarlet Eye and Rage-empowered Kurapika was able to keep Uvogian, a Master Enhancer, at bay in an all-out brawl before successfully capturing him with an ability essentially specifically made for him. Furthermore, when a member of the Kurta clan whose eyes have turned scarlet perishes in that state, the eyes remain scarlet seemingly indefinitely. It was stated that the scarlet Kurta eyeballs are an incredibly valued commodity among black market collectors, and are essentially treated as some kind of extremely beautiful and rare jewel, which I don't think would be the case if their hue dissipated in a few decades or so. We know that post-mortem Nen can linger and remain potent for decades and even generations given the right circumstances, and the eyes of the slain Kurta remaining scarlet for hundreds of years could absolutely be possible through it. So, what if the eyeballs of the slain Kurta aren't just morbid, if incredibly beautiful, jewel equivalents? What if their persistent scarlet brilliance is indicative of a special power they possess? What if the scarlet eyes can be used as catalysts for empowering and augmenting one's abilities, such as Beyond's curses? We know that Kurapika's scarlet eyes cost him an hour of his total lifespan for each second they remain active. Now, whether this is a self-imposed limitation by Kurapika created to empower and make possible his plethora of powerful abilities, or an innate property of the scarlet eyes themselves, is up for debate. For the sake of this theory, let's say that siphoning a person's life force is the method through which the scarlet eyes achieve their nigh unprecedented power. Well, a world-class master of Nen, such as Beyond, could have absolutely found a way to make use of them, perhaps by using the eyes as a catalyst to augment his ability, and then through the prism of the scarlet eyes create an extremely powerful seal with very specific properties which may have been impossible or significantly more difficult for him to achieve otherwise. By channeling his Nen through them, Beyond's Hatsu, or perhaps Beyond himself, would be empowered by the same pseudo-specialist properties Kurapika has exhibited at the cost of his own total lifespan. Now, we know that the video made by the fourth prince showcasing his collection of scarlet eyes was uploaded about 7 months prior to the voyage. Do you know what also happened approximately 7 months prior to the voyage? 14th Prince Wobble's birth. According to Longi, Beyond would bed a woman and then mark the child with a curse each time a prince was born. Knowing that the king had just recently taken a beautiful young queen and that the succession ritual was nigh, Beyond could have easily timed it so that his cursed progeny was born at essentially the same time as Prince Wobble, either through predicting and timing things correctly, or by, for instance, expediting the pregnancy and birth through Nen. If Nen can allow a man to become pregnant with and birth a child via something like Reed Island's pregnancy stone, I think expediting a pregnancy through something like Bill's Origeron is absolutely possible. With that last seal complete, and there being no time for any additional princes to be born prior to the beginning of the succession ritual, Beyond could have either sold or gifted his collection of scarlet eyes to the fourth prince, who then couldn't contain himself from immediately boasting about it online. The fourth prince has at least 10 of the eyes in his possession, and the number of 10 or more powerful curse sacrifices does roughly fit that number. Now, that could be all there is to it. Beyond used the Scarlet Eyes as a limitation and catalyst for empowering his seals, relying on their capacity for pseudo-category shifting and boosting of one's Nen in order to make his seals possible. However, what if there is a far more direct or intimate connection between the Scarlet Eyes and the succession ritual? You may or may not have noticed that I have avoided mentioning Kurapika's Emperor Time, which is how he calls the activation of his Scarlet Eyes. This may be a stretch, but what if the Kurta Eyes are somehow related to the Hui-Guro family, and thus the lineage of Kakin's monarchs? I've got two relatively flimsy pieces of evidence for this. First, am I the only one who thinks that the name of Emperor Time doesn't really fit with Pika's character? Kurapika isn't usually overly dramatic or haughty, and him just randomly choosing to name the activation of his Scarlet Eyes Emperor Time when he comes from a small secluded clan led by a village elder always seemed a bit strange to me. Instead, he may have either heard or read about some of the Kurta referencing their Scarlet state as Emperor time or some such, and decided to name it that as an homage to his clan's traditions. Second, on the volume 35 cover, we can see King Nasubi as well as almost all the princes pictured around the seed urn. All of them are directly adjacent to and touching it, apart from the 14th Prince Wobble, which was very likely an allusion to the fact that the baby swap had already occurred at that point and that it wasn't the real Wobble Oito was pictured with. However, who is both directly touching the urn and being framed by it center stage? Kurapika. If this cover art alluded to the pictured baby not actually being Wobble, and thus not a proper participant in the Succession War, it would make sense it could also be pointing to Kurapika's, thus far undiscovered, connection to it. One way this could work is if the Kurta were somehow connected to the ancient origins of the Kakin Empire. Perhaps an ancestor of the Hui Guro, willingly or not, went into exile with his family as he did not want anything to do with the succession blood ritual the first king of Kakin wanted to enact, with his bloodline, now known as the Kurta, then being hunted down as word spread about them being evil crimson-eyed devils. Over time, the original reason for why people hated and hunted them was lost, and only the sentiment was left. This would then be kept as a secret by the Kurta village's elders, as they would not want their younger and more impulsive clan members to seek any kind of revenge. Another would be if the Kurta were the original rulers and inhabitants of Kakin, that the first Uiguro patriarch somehow infiltrated only to then take over their territory and subjects. Considering the very prominent themes of stolen identities absolutely permeating the Succession War arc, the Uiguro family having arisen to power through the theme of stolen identity would be very narratively and thematically consistent. Being an imposter himself, the first king could not fault others for infiltrating his bloodline. Hence why the rule that only the children of the king's legal wives was a necessary limitation to make the ritual function. Props to Ivan Blue Cool for pointing out the prominence of stolen identities as a theme this arc on my chapter 412 review. Also, due to being feared and hunted, the Kurta clan were forced to move from place to place, with the last place they settled prior to the massacre being the deep woodlands of the Luxo province. It's important for this theory to note that we actually don't know where the Kurta originally hail from, or on which continent Luxo is located. However, because the Empire of Kakin is located on the Asian continent, it is my guess that Luxo was likely located either somewhere on Asia or on the unnamed continent immediately below it. Whatever their connection may be, the Scarlet Eyes somehow being associated with Kakin's first king and therefore the seed urn and therefore the succession ritual would make their use by Beyond all the more apt. The Scarlet Eyes would then serve as a direct connection to the royal Kakin lineage, thus bridging the gap between Beyond's own progeny and the royal bloodline of the Hui Guro, and thus allowing Beyond to directly augment the succession ritual in some way via his seals. Now, I know what you're thinking. But wait, the massacre of the Kurta occurred less than 10 years ago. That wouldn't fit the timeline, since the eldest among the princes are easily in their 30s. Excellent point, dear viewer. However, hear me out. Beyond could have absolutely acquired most of the eyes prior to the Kurta massacre by the Phantom Troop. Bear in mind that he's been prepping for this for over half a century, and the Kurta have been discriminated against and hunted down for way longer than that. A few of them going missing every decade or so was perhaps to be expected. It's really not difficult to imagine that he had gotten hold of multiple pairs of eyes throughout that long time span. As such, it's entirely possible that Beyond had nothing to do with the Kurta massacre. Nonetheless, considering his all-pervasive influence and decades of planning, there are a myriad of ways to link him to it, but I'll leave things here for now. And that's my crackpot theory about how Kurapika, or more specifically the Scarlet Eyes, may be linked to Beyond and Kakin's succession ritual. People talk about YouTubers getting hiatus-brained and coming up with all sorts of nonsense just to have something to talk about during those long dry spells, while I apparently come up with crazy stuff like this when the manga is actually coming out. Different strokes for different folks, I guess. What you guys think? Any merit to any of this at all, or am I just making connections where there are none? Before signing off, I'd like to thank the thinkers and overthinkers for going the extra mile in supporting the channel. The channel was recently hit with a copyright strike for no specified reason whatsoever, so if any of you are interested in supporting my work, feel free to become a channel member or preferably, since YouTube is unpredictable, join my Patreon. As always, thank you very much for watching, your feedback is always appreciated. Subscribe if you'd like more content like this, and I'll see you in the next one.